So this talk is very much about feeling things. So what I'm going to have Christina here do, my associate, is pass around a couple of tablets so that you can understand what I'm talking about feeling your mobile games as we talk through this. So I'll pass one tablet on one side, one on the other, give it a feel, pass it to the person next to you, and just go on to the back with it as I'm talking. It's a little demonstration of a guitar application so you can feel the strings on the guitar, and it just really adds to the experience. Okay, so first, here's the agenda. We'll go through who immersion is, some lessons that we've learned from the console space, and why tactile feedback is important in general. And then about mobile games specifically, some examples from Google Play, the developers that I've worked with, and some promotional opportunities specific to Google and the Android platform, and some programming tools. And if there's any kind of questions at the end, we'll take that outside because I know the timing's a little bit short. So who is Immersion? We've been around for over 20 years. You probably know us best from Xbox and PlayStation, the Rumble pads, that feeling from Xbox and PlayStation. So we license our technology, that Rumble feeling or force feedback from Logitech when you're feeling a racing wheel. That feeling in the games is where we got our start 20 years ago. We're in many different industries now, not just gaming, not just PC console, but now mobile. We're in automotive, we're in medical devices. Anywhere you could add a sense of feeling, a sense of touch to the human-computer interface. We're in over 2 billion devices worldwide. We don't make the devices, we just give the recipes on how to create the devices, okay? These are some past examples of where our feedback technology, the force feedback technology or Rumble technology, tactile feedback, is in many products today. So what have we learned from the console space in all this time, that over plus 20 years that we've been doing this? We know that gamers like the feel of the games, and it can be applied to every type of genre out there in the gaming market. So for example, PlayStation, you've got Gran Turismo, feeling a racing game as the tires are sliding out in a corner, or you've got a collision from one side to the other. Feeling that experience makes it visceral. Something like Xbox, where you've got Destiny, that's a completely different kind of game. That's a shooter, where you have all the weapons that feel different in the game. So I run up and I hit someone over the head with my pistol. It feels quite a bit different than firing a laser or a machine gun. And then for something like Nintendo and their Wii, you've got an adventure game like Legend of Zelda that's completely different than the other two. You feel the galloping of a horse. You feel when you're fishing and you get a fish on the line, or pull back a bow and arrow and you feel the launching of the arrow. So we've been experiencing these sorts of games for decades now, and gamers love the feel of it. And the OEMs understand that. So way back when PlayStation 3 came out, many of you may have noticed that they dropped out the Rumble feedback. They were trying to cut cost, and so it's like, well, we don't need it. The gamers said, no, we miss it so much on PlayStation, and within 6 months, they brought it back. Now, with the release of the Xbox One, Xbox is taking it a step further. Not only do they have Rumble, a small motor and a large motor, which is standard, they've put little motors in the triggers so that they can have a little bit more sensitivity in the interactions in their games, step it up just a little bit more. So you're going to be feeling a lot of different sensations in the games to come in Xbox One that you haven't had before. So gamers appreciate the audio as well, not just the force feedback, but how many people turn off their audio when they play a console game? Not that many, right? You like that experience. But it's different in mobile. In mobile, a lot of users will turn off the audio in their game. So where does that leave you? That's a problem. So what you can do is use the tactile feedback as kind of like think of it as a boombox, like a bass within your application. So even if they've turned off the audio, they can still feel connected to the experience of the interactions that are going on. Look at what Red Lynx has done from Ubisoft. They've got their Trials Fusion game, which is a motorcycle game, and you get to feel all the interactions on the console side. But what they've done is they've done a port of that, a very similar version for mobile. And on the Android side, where you've got vibration control, they've added the same sort of feel to their mobile title. So you can feel the tires when they land in the game or any collisions in the game, as well as mini games like slot machine going around or the reward wheel. Now that we have a method to add vibration into games on the Android platform, you can make the feeling in Android the same that you have on console. And the industry's taking notice. Folks like Rovio, with their Friends title, their Angry Birds Friends, they see that by including the touch feedback, it's extending the engagement, that their players are playing longer. And if they're playing longer, that's going to be leading to monetary rewards as well. You've got the creative manager at Ubisoft for their Trials Frontier game saying that it rounds out the experience. They understand from the console side that gamers like it, so it's only fitting if they've got a method on the Android side to also include it. Now, we've done a lot of studies before we entered into the mobile side for the tools to find out if people on mobile even want this experience. So yes, it's in your living room, that's one thing, but out in mobile, are they going to like it? So we've done a lot of studies internally for this before we developed any tools. And they say yes. Overwhelmingly, they like the experience. So we took a study of a bunch of users, and they didn't have to play a game. All they had to do was feel the effects from a game. We put it into a video and let them try it out. And look what they said here. You've got the control trailer that had no feeling versus the trailer that had feeling, the game trailer of Need for Speed. And they said that overall, 11% higher rating for this type of experience. 11% more likely to buy the game on Google Play because of this feeling, and to share it on social channels like Facebook. And they're more likely to replay it. That's returning back to the game, so we like that. The top 5 reasons that we find from console that translate right over into mobile are that there's a sense of realism. It feels like what we expect in the real world. So having this sense of touch is really something that's nice in that mobile experience. Combining the audio, the visual, and the feeling synced together is an awesome experience. And even if you turn off the audio, you still have that tactile connection to the game. So there's greater user satisfaction, like I said, like a subwoofer when the audio's off. But then there's also a more emotional connection to the experience when they can feel what's going on. And the number one reason to be putting effects into the mobile games is that you differentiate from your competition. There are plenty of games out there, but how many of them can you feel? So if you take the time to put in some effects into your game, you're going to differentiate yourself from the others. And what does that do? That leads, here we go, there we go, okay. This leads to promotions. So just last month, Google launched a Games You Can Feel campaign. So they looked at the games that were out there that had this feeling technology into it, the vibration, the force feedback, and they picked 15 titles to promote. Some of these are big names, like Grand Theft Auto, or like drag racing from Creative Mobile. There's also Angry Birds in this, and Trials Frontiers from Red Links. But there are also indie titles here. There's an archery game. There's a little basketball shooter game in here. Hero Ninja Cats and Clouds and Sheep. These are their indie titles as well as the big houses. So they're recognizing that this is something that iOS doesn't do, and it's something that differentiates the app, and they want to help promote it. So it's a good reason to think about, if you want some promotions, adding in a feature like this. So let's talk about more on a physiological scale why tactile feedback is important. Anybody know this guy, homunculus? This is the mapping of our sense of feeling in our body. And what do you notice about it? You notice that your feeling in your hands is predominant. And what is that? That is the mobile user. That is the person holding the device or holding the game controller. So it's the gamer and the mobile user. So it's the perfect opportunity to connect with them with that sense of touch. The sense of touch is many things. It's intimate, it's immediate, and it's emotional. Think about a Facebook poke. What is that? That's a message, right? But if I come up to you and I actually poke you, I'm in your space. That's immediate, that's emotional, you might back up. It's one of these things that is really defining to our character. interacting with the real world. And what we have right now with mobile is this problem of isolation. You see all these people, they're looking down at their devices, but they're not connected to the experience. In some cases, they may be texting each other, they may be communicating to each other while they're sitting right next to each other, but they're not really communicating in a real intimate way. So this sense of feeling, if you can add it into the content, you're going to have a more visceral, a more emotional contact with that gamer, with that user. So I want to talk about when you add vibration effects in, how to do it. You don't want to overwhelm the user. You want to be very simple at where you put it. You don't want vibration happening throughout every part of your game. You want to create wow moments. And all of this is what that's talking to. So for example, if you've got a shooter game that's firing all over the place, you may not want to put any kind of effects in the firing, but perhaps when you're taking damage, or when you've got a power-up, other events outside of the event that is happening all the time. And you always want to play test your tactile effects because our sense of touch is personal. And what you may like, another user may not like. So you always want to play test and put in some smart options. And we're going to show some examples for this. So, Max Payne, Grand Theft Auto from Rockstar, they've got a couple of titles out there. For both games, every weapon feels different. So a pistol feels different than a shotgun, just like what you get in a console experience. And for the vehicles, things like opening and closing a car door or feeling a collision like you would in a console game, you also feel in the mobile game. Sega, they've got Sonic out there, and so this is one of those experiences where you're collecting rings, but you're collecting rings all the time. So they didn't put any feeling on the collection of rings. What they put the feeling on were on the jump pads, on when you lose your rings, elements like that. When you supercharge before Sonic takes off, they put feeling into that. And in Afterburner Climax, there's a lot of firing going on there. They didn't put it on the firing, they put it where you're taking damages, you're doing your afterburner effect, the wow moments in the game. Angry Birds Friends, so this is more of a casual title, but they wanted you to feel the stretching of the catapult. They wanted you to feel the collision when the bird hits the objects and when the bad piggies explode. So they put in special moments there too. But it wasn't overwhelming. They made sure it was subtle. This is an indie developer, a very simple tile game. When you move your finger over the tiles, if you can interact with it, you get a little tick, tick, tick on the tiles. And that's enough to connect the user to the experience. All right, so let's talk about the programming tools real quick. All of the operating systems, they have a method for vibration control, but they're not all equal. So what can you do if you're not doing an Android, but you're doing the other methods? It's time consuming, so you want to reuse your previous work whenever possible. Save what you've learned feels good already. If you're setting durations for the vibration to turn on and off, you want to save that information. You also want to test on the most popular devices. So you don't have to test on everything, but try to test on the top devices that you can. And if you don't have them, look for somebody that you can, some friends. We talked about in the last session, there was a soft launching. Try to get some users to try it out and give you some feedback on the experience. And also give some user options. That last tile game, they didn't just have vibration on and off, they had settings for distinct and subtle. So a strong setting and a soft setting. So if you allow settings like that, you compensate for both male and female experiences. So men feel things differently than women. They may like it stronger or softer. And there are also regional differences between Europeans and Asians in some cases. Like Nokia, when they added the feeling on their keyboards for their phones, they wanted it very subtle. But the experience for Samsung, they wanted their keyboards very strong. So it's these sorts of things, the regional differences, that you're going to take care of if you give user options. All right, so specifically for Android, since it's such an open platform for us, we created a vibration library for developers to use to make it super simple to add that kind of console experience in. It's free. It's 124 pre-made effects for all the developer community to use, and we call it the TouchSense SDK. And what's the difference between Google Vibrate and what we have for the extended method? Basically, you're using the vibrate command, and instead of just turning the motor on, we're saying go over to this library of predefined patterns, pick one, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever you want, and bring it back into the game and use those voltage parameters to do the feeling. So instead of having one basic effect that is buzz or buzz for a moment, you can change the voltage. You can control the voltage and have subtle effects, like that guitar application where you've got the pluck of the string, but it can also fade off and be very subtle. It's also conserving power by this method because we're not using full voltage all the time. And the other most important component to this is that it's more reliable across Android devices. Look how many Android device makers there are out there. There are over 600 of them. There are over 7,000 models of Android devices. How am I supposed to make something that feels good across all those different motor types and all those different manufacturers? This library, since we work with the manufacturers, they pay us for their hardware, for the IP of the circuit design and the amplifiers and the motors. We know about these motors. So as a result of that, in the library, there's actually 5 different ways it can go. You put the library in, you launch your game, it checks the device type and the motor type. So if I want explosion 12 or button click 1, it checks the motor type and it sends different parameters based on the type of motor. So you get a more consistent experience on all the Android devices out there. We also have some free apps on Google Play. So there's Haptic Muse and the Haptic Effect Preview app. The Haptic Effect Preview app lists things out in categories. So if you want a button click, or you want something that ramps up or fades off, or an explosion, or some weapon effects or drawing effects, they're right here so you can try it on an Android device before you do any programming. So look for the Haptic Effect Preview app that's free. Then there's also Haptic Muse. The Haptic Effect Preview app doesn't have any sound, doesn't have any visuals to it. This one does. So it has little animations of sound and of like a dragon that's flapping its wings and blowing fire, and it shows you the effects with it, what kind of effects you might put in that scenario. So if you're not really creative about it and you want to say, well, what could I use this effect for? This gives you some use cases in fantasy games and casino and arcade games, battlefield games. You can check that out. That's free too. Uh-oh. Let's see, is that? Now, we have native support, but we also have support in all these different environments. So if you want to use Marmalade or Unity or GameMaker or Cocos, we have all this support too. So just come to me if you want to ask questions about this, or go to our website. I'll show you here. You've got immersion.com, and there are plenty of documents, quick start guides to show you how to take the method. It's basically a play and a stop command. You put the library in, you choose the effect that you want, you play it, and you stop it. And if you have a game that you're not sure about where to put effects into, you can contact me. I review games all the time, and I give comments back on use effect 5 or 7 for this event in the game. And then I reach back out to our partners, Samsung, LG, Toshiba, Google, for the promotions and say, here's a game that feels good, you should check it out, and contact the developer if you like it. So we're here about creating great games. We love the games environments out there. That's why we created Force Feedback so many years ago. And we think we can do the same thing in the mobile space if you, the game developers, want to have that experience and differentiate your app from what's currently out there. And with that, I think, am I about?
Well, no, I think we've got time for a question or two.
Excellent.
Maybe. If anyone from the audience has one, I know I've got one. If otherwise, but no, we've got one up at the back here.
So you mainly say to specialize on mobile, or all the examples were on mobile, but for example, if I'm making a game on Unity for PS4 or PS3, Xbox One, will you also provide us support to create these effects on those platforms?
So currently it is just for Android. We do have methods that are, say, for Xbox or PlayStation that could be built into tools like Unity, but they're not available yet. So right now it's really just a focus on Android. Say again? I'm sorry.
Hold on, I'll get the microphone over.
So it's only Android iOS and Windows, it will not. The same program will not work. Is it?
So
mistaken?
yes, so let's talk about iOS games. I thought somebody might ask. So currently, there is no support for vibration control for games from iOS. They say that it's only for notification. So if you want to have a notification that buzzes, yes, you can use the vibrate command. Everything else is a private method. So we have our tools that could work if the method were public, but it's not available yet. But you've probably heard about the Taptic engine. So they've got that for the watch, and they also have it for the MacBook Pro for the touchpad. They don't have it available for mobile, but in the future, maybe. We don't know. But if they do have support for the developer community, Immersion would support it.
God bless Apple and its inscrutable rules. Well, thank you very much, Bob. That was a great talk. I'm sure Bob would be happy to answer any other questions anyone else has.
I'll be out in the back.
And a big round of applause.